Have you ever felt blindsided by a complication in pregnancy that left you feeling lost and unprepared? In this episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast, we sit down with Krista, who vulnerably shares her journey navigating a large fibroid, an incarcerated uterus, and an emergency C-section after a long labor. Krista's story brings up the important question: how do you navigate for yourself and find support when faced with unexpected challenges in pregnancy and birth? Join us as we explore the power of trusting your instincts, seeking specific help, and finding healing through sharing your story. Krista's experience highlights the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right and leaning on others during trying times. Tune in to gain valuable insights on facing the unknown with strength and grace. The Golden Hour Birth Podcast, a podcast about real birth stories and creating connections through our shared experiences. Childbirth isn't just about the child. It's about the person who gave birth, their lives, their wisdom, and their empowerment. We're Liz
and Natalie,
the Golden Hour Birth Podcast, and we're here to laugh with you,
cry with you,
and hold space for you. Welcome to the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. I am your co-host, Liz.
And I'm your co-host, Natalie. And tonight we have Krista from St. Louis on. We were connected through our husband's cousin. So thanks so much for coming on tonight, Krista.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you want to go ahead and tell listeners a little bit about you and your family.
Yeah. So the reason why we're all here, I am Nolan's mom. He was born May 5th, 2022. So he's a Cinco de Mayo baby. Is 20 months old or, almost 2 years old, a year and a half. It's so crazy, like how we say months in the age, but I get it now after being a mom. So other than that, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, sister, daughter. I'm also a teacher. I've been teaching for about 10 years. Outside of being a teacher mom, I love exercising. I play pickleball. We recently got a Peloton, so I've been really into that. I love meal prepping. Spending time with family and friends is really important to me. And I love technology, shopping, a little bit of Netflix. Also, becoming a mom, I've been really big into self-care. So I love getting my nails done, like going to get a massage because, like, as I like to say, like, mama deserves it.
For sure.
Yeah. I was born and raised in St. Louis. So also like love anything St. Louis, like emo, toast ravioli, like give me all of the things.
Yes.
Gooey butter cake.
Yes. All of it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I could talk about emos all day.
I mean, I love Provel cheese.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I just moved, my work moved to the Hill and I just started, they just opened like a month or two ago and I'm just like in heaven with all of the Italian restaurants.
Food. Love it. So if you want to go ahead and go into like you guys deciding to start a family or finding out you were pregnant.
Yeah. So my husband and I met in college. Back up a little bit. We dated actually 7 years before we got engaged. It was kind of like I was young and we knew we wanted to get married eventually and like start a family, but like we wanted to live life a little bit on our own first. So we're actually both living in Soulard. So yeah, you know about Soulard. So much fun. Lots of things to do there, both with our friends and kind of like enjoy that life before. But now at this point, my husband and I, Patrick, have been married for almost 7 years. As far as starting a family too, we wanted to like save up money to buy a house. Like we were living in this very small apartment in Kirkwood for about a year. And I told him, we will buy a house in 1 year. Like I want to get out of this little apartment after Soulard. And so we bought a house in a year. After that too, it was like, okay, let's save up money so that we can have some kids and like want to like kind of live the life, like the way that we want to live. Bought a house in 2018. And then, COVID kind of hit in 2020 and it feel like it just changed everything. There was just so much uncertainty there. So it was like, okay, like, what do we do? Do we wait? We also really wanted to travel. So we took actually all in 1 year, the year I got pregnant. We went to Mexico, Gulf Shores, LA. And then our last trip was like a small little trip to the Lake of the Ozarks with some good friends for my birthday. And that was when we were kind of starting to try to get pregnant. So it took us about 2 months to get pregnant. So it happened very quickly for us.
Yeah. Sounds like you had a good year though. Like perfect, kind of like last hurrah. Not that you have to stop traveling when you're with kids, but it's just, an uncomplicated journey there.
So that was super fun too, just to do all of the things. And then like, okay, we're ready.
Yeah. Perfect. So what was pregnancy like?
So pregnancy, it kind of started out pretty normal. I mean, it's my first one, so I didn't really know what to expect. So it was like when I was at the Lake of the Ozarks, I actually started to get like really shortness of breath. And I was like, okay, like this is really weird. Like I usually exercise a lot. Like this is something different. I was nauseous on the car ride. I'm like, that's definitely something that's not like me. So it was like all the symptoms of like my period, but like it never came. So kind of like taking that pregnancy test and, like it was like, okay, we want to like wait to tell people, not right away, like afraid, something might happen. And like I said, awful morning sickness. It was like all day sickness. Like I never threw up, but it was just awful. I remember I look back at like my notes and I'm like, this is the worst. Like, why did I get pregnant? I did a Zofran and like it really didn't work either. We went to the doctor in 9 weeks and she's like, okay, everything is good, except she's like, okay, you have this 12-centimeter fibroid that is on top of your uterus. And it was like, I didn't even know what a fibroid was. I remember I like didn't even Google like what's a fibroid. I went on Facebook and I Googled fibroid pregnancy. And I actually found this group. It's called Fibroid Sisters Pregnancy. And I kind of found a lot of comfort like finding that group like later on in pregnancy. I went on there. It was like, okay, women had like 5 fibroids or like 1 very tiny fibroid. I'm like, okay, like I'm hearing all of this. Like I feel, a little bit more confident about kind of what's going on. And so it's basically like a large growth that was on top of my uterus. And I remember my OBGYN was like, did you know that you had like, you don't know that I'm like, how would I know? Like, I feel like you're the person that's supposed to kind of tell me this. So other than that, it was like, okay, like, what do we tell people? Like, we're ready to tell people. I'm not going to say, hey, mom, I'm pregnant. I also have this gigantic fibroid. So we kind of just didn't talk about the fibroid because the OBGYN, she was like, we don't really have to worry about it. Like, everything is fine. We're just going to kind of monitor it. So like in the back of my mind, I just kind of kept that in there. So I remember at 12 weeks, I had a really bad stomach pain. And I remember calling my girlfriend and she's like, okay, don't go to the ER. Like, don't freak out. You can go to the maternity center and like, they will take care of you. So I went there and they basically told me like that it was a stomach bug. And so I go walking out of the maternity center, like I'm hunched over. I cannot walk at all. And like, remember thinking like something's wrong. Like this is not how a stomach bug should be. So the next day I'm kind of laying in bed. My mom comes over. She's trying to help me do things around the house. And she's kind of like, like maybe we should go back. And like my mother-in-law is also texting me like, you should probably go back. So we ended up going back again because it was like, I knew like something's wrong. And they did an ultrasound. My mom was there with me, and they explained at that point that I had an incarcerated uterus. So basically meaning like my uterus was out of place. And in my mind, they never really said it, but I think that the fibroid on top of my uterus was what pushed it kind of out of place. So I remember he was like, oh, if any issues come up, like we'll schedule a little procedure, like, but you're fine for now. And my mom kind of motioned, like the room was very dark. I had a wheelchair that I'd come up to the maternity center in, and she's like, she's in a wheelchair, like, and he's like, oh, well, that like changes everything, that you're in pain. And everything kind of moved like really fast after that. My OBGYN was there and with a resident, and she's like, this is really rare, like what has happened. And it was like something like 1 in 3,000 pregnancies, this actually happens. And she's like, I've done a few of these in my career. So it was like very fast. Like she needed to do it right then. Like she didn't even have time for like Patrick to come. Like I was texting him, kind of let him know what was going on, but my mom was in the room. And basically they worked together kind of with their hands and tools to push the uterus back into place. So like I was on all fours at this point, and like my poor mom is like in there having to experience this.
Oh my gosh.
And I was in like so much pain. And when I got done, they were like, well, labor is going to be nothing for you if you deal with this.
Yeah.
And okay, like, am I supposed to feel better? And they also said that usually they put people under anesthesia for that. But they said it was better that I didn't, because they kind of knew by the sounds that I was making that like it had worked. So basically when like I screamed the loudest, like it was done. And that was like crazy to me. Like it is 22 at this point. Like why?
I hope this isn't like too TMI, but like, did they like put their hands up?
Yes, that's what I was trying to explain. Their hands up there, tools up there to push it into place.
Oh my God. I am so sorry you went through that. That's
And
a lot.
yeah, I remember after too that someone was like, that also could have caused a miscarriage. And I'm like, I didn't even think about, I like had no time to ask questions or like anything like that. It just happened so quick. Too. So kind of after the procedure, I wish they would have just said like, hey, you're going to be in a ton of pain for like a few days. Because I kept going back to the maternity center because I was in so much pain. And I was like, did it happen again? Like, can the uterus go back out of place? But it was just kind of part of the procedure. And they gave me some pain medication to kind of just get through it.
Okay. Was it like an outpatient? Like they didn't admit you, or
I went right home.
Like what?
Yeah. Yes, I remember like my best friend brought me food, and it was like I could not do anything that weekend. I had to miss work a few days, but it was like, okay, after that, like let's keep on rolling.
Oh, wow.
So after that, it was pretty normal. I'm always in the back of my mind, like thinking about that happening. And I was just so scared that something else was going to go wrong. Like,
yeah,
it just, yeah, that was tough kind of dealing with that. But yeah, kind of skipping ahead a little bit, to like 36 weeks. So yeah, everything was pretty normal. Other than that, I remember, I think I made one more trip back to the maternity center. But that was it. So at 36 weeks, it was like the baby, they said that the baby was really big, but I also had that big fibroid in there too. So I was measuring ahead, like my stomach was just huge, uncomfortable. They actually had me redo my glucose test. And I don't know if that's like a normal thing that happens. But I passed that again.
and
and
the 1 hour one?
Yeah, just the 1 hour one. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't have to like do the 3 hour? Because like I know that that's another one that you might have to do.
So I did the 1 hour one like previously, and they're like, let's just redo it again.
Yeah.
At 36 weeks. So that was kind of strange to me. But everything was always good with the baby. And they did say I had low amniotic fluid at that 36 weeks. So that's when I had to do the weekly non-stress test and kind of those extra ultrasounds too, which I was kind of already doing with the fibroid too, just to kind of keep an eye out with that. So we were like, ever since, I guess, 36 weeks, it was like, we were so prepared. We had our bags. We were like ready to roll. Like anything can happen. Like this crazy fibroid pregnancy, like, let's do it. So I remember our 37-week appointment, like everything was good. And then at 38 weeks, we didn't have our bags. Like we drove separate cars, like from work. So like we weren't prepared at all. Like, I don't know why. So we had to do the non-stress test. And basically when that was going on, the baby's heart rate dropped when I had a contraction. And I didn't know at the time. Then we went into kind of the ultrasound room, and they're like, when that happens, like you don't get to leave the hospital. And it was like, whoa, like, okay, did not expect that. And I just start like crying. I'm like calling my parents. I'm like, we don't have our bags. And like the baby is coming right now. Like, we got to go, people. Like, it's go time. And like, little did I know, like so much was still like in store for my journey after that. So kind of after that, they took us up to our room. Like my parents come, they get us our bags, like we're kind of cozy. And at this point, this was Tuesday, May 3rd, getting admitted. And then like skipping ahead just a little bit. So he was Cinco de Mayo baby. So born on May 5th on Thursday. So I remember like relaxing, and they were starting the Pitocin around like 8 p.m. I think was when everything started to kind of get rolling. But at that point I was dilated like 2 centimeters. So like not very far along. And I remember the first night they had to move us rooms because of staffing issues. And that was kind of a whole big thing too. Like we did not get any sleep. I ended up, they did the Foley bulb around 2 a.m. And we did not take any birthing classes or anything like that. She was kind of like, we'll talk you through everything. Like, you don't need any of that. So I had no idea what some of these things were. And like, I trust that the nurses, know what's best and are going to do what's best. So they said I could get like the epidural before the Foley bulb. And in my mind, like I knew I wanted an epidural. I was like to them, I said, is there any reason why I should wait? And like that. They're like, no, go ahead and get it if you want it. And like in my mind, I'm like, there is no like gold star for how long you are without an epidural. Like just
that's what my pediatrician said to me. You don't get a gold star.
Yeah. Like, yes, there's no medal. Like, so just get it if like you want it. And if you don't, like, that's okay too. But I knew that I wanted that. So yeah, everything kind of Tuesday, just moving very slowly. And like the same for Wednesday. It was like, okay, it's May 4th. Like I'm ready. I'm having a May the 4th be with you Star Wars baby.
Yes.
It is what it is. So I remember I was dilated to 4 at 4:30 a.m. on Wednesday. And then they came back and they're like, no, you're actually a 2. Like you haven't made any progress. It's all about perspective. And I was like, what? Like I was so excited thinking I was making this progress. I remember like they got the peanut out. I'm trying all these different positions. Like we're FaceTiming people just to kind of pass the time, like letting people know what's going on. And they're like, is there the baby yet? Like what's happening? And I was like, nothing is happening. So they ended up like upping the Pitocin, and they just kept checking me. Still no progress. And they had to stop the Pitocin and then start it over from the beginning. I'm like, okay, like let's do this. It's all right. And they were still kind of checking me, and yeah, basically like it was still the same. So then I have at 12:30 a.m. they tried a suppository, kind of a different medication. So this would be on Thursday, and they're like, this is going to work better. So it was 4:30 a.m. I was still at a 3, and that's when they decided to break my water. And I had no idea what that was like going to be like either. It just kept coming, and that was something totally crazy too. I'm like, oh my goodness. Kept leaking. And finally I was at 4 centimeters dilated, and I was just starting to feel like a lot of pressure. And like some time went on, I was at a 5, and I took notes like the nurse is amazing right now. So like everything was moving along. And she kept checking on me, and it was 11:30 a.m. and I was dilated to a 9. And then it's like, okay, like a 9, like I'm still at a 9. I'm like calling my mom and dad. I'm like, come to the hospital. Like, what are you doing? It's raining. My mom was at the post office. I'm like, get here. Like the baby is coming. I knew that I wanted my mom in the room for that too. That was really something that was important to me. Patrick was in there as well, but I just really wanted her to be in the room. So she kind of rushes over there, and like, we still were not close. So I don't really remember when or like if ever they're like, you're out of 10, but I just remember I'm like, I'm feeling a lot of pressure, and they're like, it's time to push. So I couldn't really figure out what time that was around. My husband thinks around 5 p.m. So I basically pushed for an hour, and it was like, nothing was happening there either. So they actually had me stop for an hour. They're like, we want like the head to drop. So like stopping for that hour was like the most pain I had like ever been in. It was just like, I kept telling myself, I was like, you cannot like remember pain. I'm like, you'll never be able to like feel this pain again. Like, just get through it, have this baby, like it'll be okay. So I don't know how, but that kind of got me through that hour of stopping. And, they were like, well, your hips are small and the baby's head is really big. So like, it wasn't like I was getting a lot of answers as to kind of what was happening. And basically they were like, you're pushing like a rock star. But if you want to stop, like, that's okay. We can do the C-section or you can keep pushing. And I was like, I want to keep pushing. Like, I want to know like that I gave it my all before let's have a C-section. So I pushed for another hour after that and just, I mean, nothing was happening. So kind of after that, the baby's heart rate was really high and I ended up spiking a fever. And I remember they're like, have you been exposed to COVID? Like trying to kind of figure out, I'm like, no, I've been here. I haven't been exposed to COVID. And kind of after that, it got a little bit scary. It was like, what is going on? So the doctor kind of came in and they're like, we're going to have to do an emergency C-section. And I remember just like crying at that point. And like, not because I didn't want a C-section or I was scared or anything like that. It was like, I had spent so much time and energy on one way. And like, now it's like just going to be a C-section. Like it was so like kind of just like frustrating. Like, should we have done that from the beginning? Like what's happening? And I mean, I was scared too, just what's going to happen. And it was like so many people in the room. Like my parents were in the room for a little bit. Patrick is in there. Only he was allowed for the C-section. So he was getting his scrubs on. He was getting his mask on. And I was so sleepy. Like I could not keep my eyes open. I guess because of all the medicine and like I was exhausted.
Yeah, it was like 48 hours.
But like at the time, I'm like, why am I getting sleepy? Like I need to be awake for this, like be awake. Like why? I'm always tired. Like why? But like looking back, I'm like, that's like a marathon. Like my body, it was like shutting down almost at that time. So like in the C-section room, I just remember, like not really all being there, but like trying so hard to keep my eyes, open. And it was like, all of a sudden they were like, it's a boy. And we did not find out. So I was like, what? Because everyone was telling me like, you're having a girl, it was like, we did all those old wives' tales and it was going to be a girl, but no, it was a boy. So I was just so excited. And Patrick kind of got that time to like cut the umbilical cord and hold him. And the whole time, I'm being like fixed back up, feeling this pressure. And I'm like, I'm kind of feeling some things. So they're like pumping me with more medication. And I'm like, why do I have like this IV in my arm? And they told me, they're like, you lost a lot of blood. Like we had it just in case we had to use it for like a blood transfusion, but like it wasn't needed. And I was like shaking and they're just like pumping more meds in me. And I also remember being like, how big is the baby? And they were like 7 pounds, 12 ounces. And I'm like, that's interesting because whole time it was like big baby. Like to me, that's a very like medium sized baby. I was expecting like 9 pounds. 10 pounds. After they pumped me up and made me redo the glucose test. But he was born at 9:39 p.m. So on May 5th.
Did they, when they had you open, did they like look at the fibroid or anything?
Yes. So that doctor got to see my fibroid, but she could not take it out at that time because I would lose too much blood. So probably all like, whoa, check it out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So after that, we went into the post-op room for 2 hours. So like Patrick's in there with me, my parents are in there. And actually, Patrick's parents ended up, they got exposed to COVID. So that was kind of crazy, because it was like, okay, do we let them come? Do they like wear a mask? Like, what should we do? And the doctor was very much like, if they've been exposed to COVID, like they shouldn't be around a little baby. And like, that was so hard too. Like looking back, I'm like, was that the right decision? I don't know. Like, we'll never know. They ended up not getting it either. But kind of in the post-op room, I was just like, where is my Jimmy John's? I want Jimmy John's.
I love that.
Closed. Because I gave up like, lunch meat and all of that. Like, this is my glass of champagne. Like, this is not how it should be. Like, I was.
They were closed, you said?
What's that?
They were closed?
I mean, I think so, at almost 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah. Man, I always like think back to my college days when they would be open until like 1 or 3 a.m.
I don't think so. And I remember too, I'm really passionate about breastfeeding. I'm actually still breastfeeding. I absolutely love it. So I was like, is he latched? Is he like saying all this crazy stuff? But like, he was just there, like so perfectly, like latching. And I was like, well, like one thing is going good for me right now.
Yeah.
I felt like just like he was such a good baby. To like right as he came out, that was awesome. Like I needed that. So we finally kind of moved into our room for the night, and like I don't feel like I held Nolan a lot because I was just so out of it. So it was like the only thing I could do to like bond with him was like breastfeed. And even with that, like the nurses are like turning on the lights, like, you need to stay awake right now, Krista. Like, what are you doing? And they're helping me like hold him too, because I'm like falling asleep. But other than that, it was like Patrick changed all the diapers, like had to hold him and like visit with everyone kind of coming in. And it was like, I didn't really get to do all those things. I'll kind of get to that in a minute, like why also kind of what happened after that. But so Friday, I feel like that was a pretty normal day. I could order breakfast and lunch. Like we're in there just like having a good time. Like my family came to visit after they all got off work. But I remember I felt like very sick and nauseous. And I'm like, I need to lay down. And like my mom's like, oh my gosh, like we like overdid it. We shouldn't have came to visit. And I remember my sister-in-law later, she's like, I could tell like something was like not right. She's a doctor. But she's like, I didn't feel like it was like my place to like say anything then. So that evening was when like I just started like throwing up, and it was just like crazy. Like it was thrown up like I've never seen that kind of throw up kind of before. And my stomach was huge. I guess I don't know how it should look, but like the picture that day, it just is like crazy how big my stomach was. So for Saturday, we were like, no visitors, since I was throwing up and having this awful time. But I'm like, Mom, I need you to come up because like Patrick cannot do all of this. Like I'm over here throwing up, like Nolan's crying. The nurses are running in, like we need some help. So that was when like the nurses kind of figured out that I had an ileus. So basically my like intestines just stopped working after surgery. And like, that's a normalish thing that could happen after surgery, I guess. But like, I don't know. I never really heard of someone that had that after a C-section. So they had to put an NG tube in me for that. So it went up my nose and down my throat. Like it wasn't like this little oxygen tube. I remember I text my best friend. I'm like, I got this tube. She was picturing like a cute little tube. No, it was just like up my nose, down my throat. Mm-hmm. So painful. After they put that in, they're like, oh, sometimes we get punched when we're doing this. And I felt like punching you.
Yeah.
And I remember like they were getting ready to leave after they put the tube in. And I was like, okay, like I can do this. Like maybe a few hours it's going to be in, like we'll get through this. And I'm like, just like how long about, do you think I'll have to have this in? And they're like, a few days. So I had the tube was basically pumping everything kind of out of my stomach.
Oh my God.
So And it was like with every like swallow, like you felt the tube in there. Like it was awful. And my mom out of the room for that. She came back in the room and she's like, you were just like seething. Like you were so mad at that point. And like, I just did not say a word. And I'm usually pretty dramatic and animated, but like, I did not complain because it was just that like miserable kind of what I was going through. So I remember having like wonderful nurses, in there, and they were all like, one was like prepping the other nurses. They're like, okay, like this is what she likes. This is what she doesn't like. 'Cause they'd been with me for so long. She's like, now when she goes to the bathroom, like don't stand in there with her. Like she wants you to close the door, like get out there, give her some privacy. So it was just like funny things like that, like got me through it, like all my funny quirks, but it was like, I was in so much pain. So Sunday, we're still in the hospital. It was actually Mother's Day, like worst Mother's Day ever to be in the hospital with a tube. Like my in-laws came to visit. I was just like out of it. And like, you know, everyone else got to hold the baby and just like enjoy that time. And I was just kind of just all I could do was breastfeed still at that point. And I remember they were like, you can do like, this is hard. Like you can do formula if you want. And I had nothing against that, but I was like, this is all that I can do for my baby. Like right now, like just let me do this one thing. I can't do. So like I said, yeah, that was like kind of my bond. So then on Monday, we were still in the hospital. They actually ended up kind of clamping the NG tube is what they do before they totally take it out, just to kind of see how you react to that. So I remember I could have like soda and broth and juice and like, I like had nothing, no food in my stomach. They gave me like an IV, and finally by the end of the day, I got the tube kind of taken out and I could have a dinner, like a soft dinner and then a breakfast as well. And they kind of like took out the staples for the C-section. And I remember that wasn't very bad, like kind of taking those staples out. So Tuesday was May 10th, and that was the day we finally were told that like we could go home. But I had this small problem where I could not pee because this whole time they had a catheter in me and they would like keep taking it in and out. Like I think 5 or 6 times I had that kind of in and out. So they were like, you're going to have to go home with a catheter. And I'm like, what? But I'm also like, okay, we're going home. Like, it's fine. We can do this. But it ended up, they called my doctor and she's like, take it out, make her pee, then she can go home. And I like drink tons of water throughout the day. So I'm like, yes, like if you just let me drink actual water, I will be able to pee. So sure enough, I drank water, I peed, and I was able to go home. It was like 5 p.m. by the time we actually got to our house.
Wow. So full week.
Yes. Tuesday to Tuesday.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. So how was healing from there?
So healing from there, I think like the C-section, it was pretty rough. Like I remember like asking my mom, I was like, will I ever feel like myself? Like when will this get better? And she actually had 3 C-sections. So she kind of knew what I was going through. But like not really a lot of my friends had C-sections. So I was kind of like on my own with that. But it was rough, but I would say pretty normal with recovery, just moving slow, things like that. Nolan was such a great sleeper. So like that made it, really good that he was like just so awesome. Lots of friends and family really supported us, like bring us food, helped us out, and things like that after.
That's good. It seems like you have a rockin' support system from like you're very close with your parents and your in-laws and things like that. So that's really, really great for you, especially while going through, you know, the whole pregnancy and everything. Wow.
Yeah. It's like in the back of my mind, though, it was like, okay, I still have this fibroid. Like, what's to that. So I had to go in for another ultrasound for the fibroid, and I guess it grew, they told me, like to 15 centimeters while I was pregnant. But then it like shrunk back down and it was at like 12.5 centimeters, like after I gave birth. And I found out like it weighed 2 pounds.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to have laparoscopic myomectomy was what it was called. And I had that done in September. So I was 4 months postpartum to have that.
How was that? Like I've heard of it, but I don't really know exactly what it is. Can you kind of explain?
So basically for that, like they went in through my belly button, to take it out. They had to cut it up because it was so big and put it in a little bag and then like take it out of my belly button.
Oh, wow.
That's
Yeah. How was that healing process?
new to me as well. But now my belly button is forever messed up. It's fine.
It's fine. How was that healing?
So I was so nervous because of all the crazy stuff that happened after the C-section and kind of healing from that. But that was totally fine and normal. And at this point I'd taken an extended maternity leave. And like being a teacher, I'm off in the summer, obviously, but I took that time in May. And then I also took off August, September, and then I went back in October. So it was kind of like recovering from the surgery and then going back to work.
That's really good. I'm happy that you had that long one.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was your mental health through all of this?
It's just crazy, like looking back and seeing all of what I went through. And it's so awesome just to like tell it to you guys. It's like I told you before we got on here, I was like, I tell it all the time. Like I will tell anyone that listens. Like the last time I told it was like at Patrick's work Christmas party. Someone, was asking about Nolan, like, how did everything go? And I was like, oh, emergency C-section. And she's like, tell me more. And I was like, okay, but do you really want to know everything? And she, yes. And I was like, all right, let's get it started.
Yeah.
And, like I tell it to, like one of my coworkers now, like I told it while we were on lunch duty, I was just like, here's my story. And my other coworkers like, why do you don't tell her that, like you are going to scare her. And I'm like, no, like it needs to be said, like people should hear all different types of birth stories. Like it is not all sunshines and rainbows and what you sometimes see on social media, wearing the cute gown. Like I had all of those things. I wore the hospital gown the entire time. Like it was awful. Going home, I was in pajamas.
I get it. I was too. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. Cause like fibroids are so common too. Like,
but it size of the fibroid that was so unusual.
True. Yes. Yes. Has they ever said like this could happen with like a future pregnancy, or they don't see it coming back because you had the myomectomy?
So my doctor that I had for all of this is she left. So I'm actually getting ready to, in a week, to go in for like my yearly checkup. So I plan on kind of asking some more questions kind of about that, but they never really, I know they can come back. Who also told me, she's like, you're going to have to be on birth control for the rest of your life because that makes the fibroid like not be able to grow. And I'm just like, okay, that doesn't sound right. Like, I don't know about that. So I feel like I'm going to just have to ask more questions about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, is that not something that they would have seen like on a yearly exam? Like it couldn't have grown that fast.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, but never any mention of that either. So very much went for all of my checkups and all that. So yeah.
Yeah. So you were
and
just,
he was kind of like, you didn't know you had, like more putting it on me almost.
No. Yeah. Cause we don't even get ultrasounds of the uterus until you're pregnant.
No, exactly.
yeah. Unless you have pain, I guess. And
yeah.
And like, I remember, I mean, on my chart, it's like I have painful periods and that is one of the symptoms. But obviously I don't know how everyone else is with that. So it's hard to kind of compare. And yeah, I think that was kind of just shrugged off too. Like my painful periods. I'm like, I don't know, maybe that was like a sign there too.
Yeah, definitely could have been. Yeah, they don't take our health very seriously.
Was there anything else that you wanted to add, or just any advice that you wanted to give other moms who might be going through something similar?
Yeah. Some advice. Yeah, like speak up when something doesn't feel right. That's definitely them telling me like the stomach bug and all of that. It was like something's wrong. Like I don't think it's a stomach bug. And kind of like advocating for yourself. And then also like asking for like specific help when you need it from like family or because it's so many times they're like, well, let me know if you need anything. And you're like, yes, I need, my dishwasher unloaded. I need my floor swept. Like I need food. Like ask for those specific things. Like just don't like kind of shrug that off. Like take the help kind of when you need that.
Definitely. I love that too. I feel like I always have that happen. Like, let me know if you need anything. Yeah, I do, but I don't know how to say it.
And I feel like now going through this, like other friends that have had babies, like I will bring them like breakfast, lunch, chips, like a smoothie, like all of the things. Like, can I unload? They're like, I'm sorry that I sucked before, but like now I know like that you need so much help.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. You can be my friend.
Yeah.
Just kidding. So how can people get in touch with you if they'd like?
Yeah. So like on Instagram, I'm pretty active on that. I'm not like influencer or anything like that. Just regular, crazy teacher mom. So
love it.
Too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I'm sure Nolan is just a wonderful boy and he deserves nothing but the best. And like what you did for him, that was pretty incredible. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and found it insightful and beneficial. Remember, the Golden Hour Birth Podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you appreciate the content we bring you each week, consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform or sharing the show with your friends and family. Your support helps us reach more people and continue creating valuable episodes. If you have any questions, suggestions, or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, www.goldenhourbirthpodcast, or connect with us on social media. We value your feedback and want to make sure that we're delivering the content you want to hear. Before we sign off, we'd like to express our gratitude to our incredible guests who joined us today. We are honored that they trust us enough to be so open and vulnerable. We're grateful for their time and willingness to share their stories with us. If you're interested in taking the conversation further with us, join us on our Facebook group, The Golden Hour Birth Circle. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to tune in. Until then, stay golden and remember to take care of yourself. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. Bye!